Okay, start of a new unit. Now, your job is to simplify this. Now, this is different than the last unit because if you start simplifying, you got 3 times x power. Then we have a plus. We have never had pluses and minus before. It's all times. When you run into a plus, you stop putting the operators, okay? So that changes the game, okay? These are called polynomials, okay? Write it down just on the first one. Polynomial. That's a polynomial, okay? And this is another polynomial here. That's what this is over, polynomial operations. You're going to see pluses in these. So when you run into addition and subtraction signs within the expression, that throws the 3 lines out. You're not doing that. That's when you have nothing but multiplication and division. Well, the question is, what do you have in between the polynomials? You got a plus sign, okay? When you have a plus sign, it's pretty easy to deal with. Your variable is x, okay? What is the highest power your x is ever to? A second power. So you write blank x to the second power. Then after x to the second power, you write blank x. Don't put a 1 power, just put an x. X means x to the 1 power, but you're not going to put that. Then you need what's known as the constant blank, okay? The constant blank is the values that do not have variables. They're not multiplied by variables. So we fill these in, we have our answer. So in the first polynomial, look at your x to the second. It's got a 3x second, okay? Then look in your second polynomial, you got a 2x to the second. So you add the 3 and the 2, that's 5. You do not add the powers. Adding the powers is multiplying. That's something you do when you multiply. So if you put x to the 4th power, that's wrong, okay? And it's so wrong, it's not even funny, okay? That's why if you line up the blanks, you're not going to be tempted to make that mistake. Okay, then x. X is without powers. They'd be to the 1 power, but don't waste your time putting that, okay? So you have an x here, you put a 1 in front of it, so 1x, and here's an x, that'd be a 2x, so I combine 1 and 2. By the way, after you add them, cross them out, okay? Then 1 plus 2 is 3, cross those out. Now constant, those are the numbers that aren't multiplied by any sort of variable. You have a negative 4, if it's a minus, you're thinking of it as a negative, and a negative 3. So if I add a negative 4 and a negative 3, it's going to be negative 7. Okay, so there's your answer. That's all you do. Okay, you can't add this because that's multiplied by an x to the second. That's multiplied by an x that's not to the second, and this is not multiplied by anything. So they're not those. It's just adding like terms. Okay, next problem. I'm going to put P1, P2. What operation do I have to do? You have to add. These are C's. What's the highest power your C is to? You got a C second, a C, and that's a constant. C second, C constant. So C second is your highest, okay? Plus blank C plus blank. That's how that's lined up. So C second, you got an 8 in the first polynomial. Then you have a negative 3 in the second. So you take 8 plus negative 3. That's 5. By the way, if you add something and it's 0, you take it out. Okay? Now C's. You have a negative 4 here. Remember, if it's a minus, it's a negative. And then you have a C here that would have a 1. Okay? So you add negative 4 plus 1, and that's negative 3. So you need to put a 1 in front of a letter that doesn't have a coefficient. Okay, then the constants, you take a 1 plus a 5, that's 6. That's all you do. Now, this is P1, this is P2. Now you have a minus. When you have a minus, there's something you need to do, okay? You need to make a plus out of it, and then everything in P2, not P1, you leave P1 the same, but everything, any polynomial that comes after the minus needs to switch signs. So this 3 was a positive, now it's a negative. Now don't stop there. This 2 was a negative, now it's a positive. This 5 was a positive, now it's a negative. Right? So that's how you're going to do subtraction. You're going to make that addition and switch everything in P2. So blank, and then m, the highest power, is a second power. You will not be adding the powers on the m. You will be keeping it to the second power. Adding the powers is what you do when you're multiplying. You're not multiplying jack today, okay? Plus blank m plus blank. So m to the second in P1, we have it right here, it's a 10. M2, we have a negative 3. So we add 10 plus negative 3, that's 7, okay? Now m, you have a negative 7 here. If it's got a minus, it's a negative. And then a positive 2, remember we made that positive. So a negative 7, a positive 2 is negative 5. Then constants, a 2 and a negative 5, that'd be a negative 3. Okay, next problem, 2x to the third minus 5x second plus x. You might want to put a 1 in front of that. That's P1, and we have our plus sign already, so no, don't change it. 2x second plus a 1x to the third minus 1. Now this time the highest power is a third power, okay? That's your highest power. So you start with blank x to the third. Then after 3 comes 2, blank x to the second. After 2 comes just regular x. Usually you won't see a first power. The x implies it's x to the first power. Then your constant, okay? So x3. In P1, I've got 2x to the third. In P2, here you got to look. Yeah, here's x to the third. It's got a 1. It's not in the same order, but it doesn't matter, okay? 2 plus 1 is 3, okay? Now x2, find your x2 in P1. x2, it has a negative 5 coefficient. x2 here has a 2, so negative 5 plus 2 would make negative 3. Now x, you have a positive 1, and you don't have an x in here. That's a constant, okay? So you just put the 1 down. If there's nothing that, if you don't have that term in P2 or P1, then that's what you're going with. And the constant, you just have the minus 1, so you just put that in there, okay? So there's your new polynomial. Okay, next problem. That's P1, P2. Again, you're not putting the operators because when you have plus and minus signs within the expression, that throws that strategy out the door, okay? You have a minus, you don't want that. You make it plus, and anything inside P2, you make opposite. So positive, negative, and positive. All those numbers, you got 4n to the second power plus 5 in P1. P2, you're going to have 2n to the second, negative 2n, and 4. So n is your variable. What's the highest power it's ever to? In either polynomial, it'd be a 2. So blank n to the second plus blank n plus blank. So n to the second, here it is, it's got a 4. N to the second, here it's got a 2. So you add 4 and 2, that's 6. Cross those out. Again, you don't add the powers. That's when you multiply, you add the powers. Now n, I don't have any n's in this one. The n I had was to the second. I don't have any n's in this one. This one I have a negative 2, okay? So I'm writing that down. I don't add anything. Then the constants. You have 5 and 4, both positives, so that would make 9. Okay? If you add something in at 0, you cross that blank out. Like if I add 2 things, I get 0, that eliminates the thing, okay? You get rid of the letter 2, okay? The blank and the letter. Okay, P1, P2. In P1, you got a negative 4m to the second plus a 3m minus a constant of 1. Minus, well, you want to make that plus, you're going to put a 1 there. Now that's negative 1m. And then instead of a positive 2, we're going to make a negative 2. Okay? Now, combine the like terms. 2 is your highest power, that the m is 2. So blank m2. Plus blank m, you're not going to see a 1. M means m1. And then after m, you got your constants. So m2, well, we have negative 4 here. You don't have any m2s there, so it's just negative 4. Now m, here's m, it's got a positive 3. Here's m, it's got a negative 1. So we add 3 to negative 1, that's 2. Okay. Then your constants. In P1 you have a negative 1. In P2 you have a negative 2. So negative 1 plus negative 2 is negative 3. Then, next one. P1 is 3m plus 1 minus, so you got to fix that, negative 2m to the second, positive 6m, and then negative 5. You don't switch P1, this is only P2 you switch. So if you look through that whole thing, M2 is your highest power. You look through the whole problem, not just P1, the whole problem, m to the second. So blank m to the second plus blank m plus blank. Okay, so I do not have m to the second in P1. In P2 I have the negative 2, so it'd be negative 2. M, I have a 3 and a 6. So 3 and 6 would add up to 9. Then the constants. You have a positive 4 and a negative 5. 4 plus negative 5 is negative 1. Now I'm actually going to do problem number 1 with you guys, okay? So this is P1, 5a to the second minus 3, and it's a plus, so we keep it the way it is, and this is P2. Look through the whole problem. What's the highest exponent, the highest power that you have in your variable? It's an A2, so blank A2. Now, then I'll go blank A plus blank, constant blank. So A2, okay? You have 5 and 8. That adds to 13. You're going to cross that out because you don't have any A's, okay? So out. And then negative 3, negative 1 is negative 4. So that's your answer, 13a to the second plus negative 4, or minus 4.